Okay, welcome back, everyone, and welcome to panel three. Panel three is all about the curriculum. We are one person short. We've got a slight issue with StreamYard tonight. It's not letting everyone into the studio, so hopefully Emily is going to be here shortly to join this panel all about the curriculum and representation in the curriculum. I'm going to hand straight over to Bennie to introduce herself and her latest book and tell us all about, please, the new book that has arrived, Bennie.
Yeah, so I'm just checking you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yes? All right, good. Yes, we have the diverse curriculum, and this book has been a long time coming. It's something that I've been passionate about for a very long time. I started talking about diversity in the curriculum, almost 7-8 years ago now, and I had all of these ideas percolating. I didn't quite have the brainwaves to sort of do that big book. So I wrote Diversity in Schools first, which is part of A Little Teacher's Guide from Sage Corwin. And then when I had the opportunity, started writing this one. And it's an introduction to how we diversify the curriculum in a meaningful way, making sure that we have strategies as well as the theory to be able to go ahead and do meaningful work in the curriculum. And it has had some great reviews so far, and we have very much kind of been building the training around this particular book, and the ideas that have come out of it have very much trickled into my training as I've been going around the country. So in short, it very much is the history of the curriculum. It starts off with the history of the curriculum. It goes on to talk about practical strategies and practical evaluation, and then thinks about strategies for any teacher of any subject to go away and have a look at. So there are broad themes, but there are subject specific elements in there. And I'm really pleased to say there are 6 case studies in there from serving teachers who are subject specialists who actually have done this work. Because that's always the question. Has anyone done this work? What's their recommendation? What's their experience? And there's a section at the end, which is frequently asked questions, which is a summary of all the questions that I get asked when I am doing training. Inevitably, the same questions about what you do at Key Stage 4. Is it too difficult? What if you offend somebody? Should you be teaching problematic texts? Or, questions like, well, I'm not somebody with any protected characteristics. Am I qualified to do this work? And I wanted to both provide people with knowledge, but also then to provide them with a reassurance that this is everybody's work. And if we create a beautiful curriculum, we're able to then go on to create better societies. So I've got the hardback version, but the paperback version is available from most sellers. And I always say reviews are a writer's lifeblood, the paperback version. And so if you have read it, or if you plan on reading it and you think it's any good, please do leave a review for us. But yes, this is my most recent baby, and I'm very proud of her.
And I feel like that yellow is just sunshine, isn't it? It's giving us hope. The door's wide open. You can almost like see the future through that door, Bennie. Was that the idea with the front cover design?
Yeah, absolutely. So we played with a lot of different colours. My first book, the Diversity in Schools book, was a very bright lime green, and I couldn't bear the idea that this book would be sitting in the shadows next to it. So it was a deliberate choice to have it really bright and colourful, to kind of nod to the colour that is out there that we often ignore. And the door choice, we talked about that a lot. The idea of the books sitting underneath that door is very much my approach. Very theoretical, do the research, develop subject knowledge, and then you open doors for yourself and for young people.
Brilliant. I'm going to swing over to Emily, but I'm going to come back to you with some questions in a minute. So we go from Derby to Dubai. And Emily, I've just realised it's really late for you, love. What time is it? You stayed up to talk to us.
Yeah, it's 11:09.
Oh, it's school night. Okay.
Yeah, but it's Ramadan hours currently here, so it means I get to go into work later and leave earlier. So
Fabulous. Well, it's great to see you. Tell us all about your
Thank you. So
that you've brought to
here
the
it is.
world.
So this is succeeding as a history teacher. I don't know if you can see that properly. I was listening to the previous panel, the one with Kerry on it, and you had a few co-authors, and actually my story is a bit different in the sense of I actually struggled to write this book, and the initial contract was for me to author it, and then I had to get a co-author. So Laura Gladwin kindly offered to co-write a chapter, which really did help me out to meet the deadline. Like I could go, on about actually the difficulties of writing because I didn't find it easy. I know some people did, but that wasn't necessarily my case. But it's weird because I can easily write a blog, but I struggled when it came to writing this book. So yeah, this is designed to be like a practical book for teachers, really busy, teachers that they can dip in. They don't have to read it chronologically. It's literally look at the content, whatever you want to work on, that's the page you go on to. And what I really wanted to do with this book is to bring the generic to the specific. So for things like retrieval practice, modeling, they're quite generic forms of pedagogy, but I really wanted to kind of marry that up to very subject specific element of history so that we don't lose that disciplinary thinking. And it's designed for all levels of teaching, from ECTs to heads of departments to senior leaders that don't even teach history but line manage history. So it's literally for everyone. And what I do really like about the book is that it addresses gaps within the kind of traditional discourse of history. So, for example, there's not much literature about how to lead a history curriculum in primary school. So you've got history leads or humanity leads in Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 1, but there's nothing much out there for them in terms of training and literature. So with this book, there's a case study on how to lead like a successful history department in Key Stage 2, Key Stage 1, and so on. And also there's perspectives on teaching history from like alternative provisions such as SEM, as well as PRU, because it's quite different there, as well as case studies on A level as well. And what I really do like about this is that we don't kind of treat SEN as just one blanket statement, but I've got case studies of how to teach history to those that struggle with dyslexia, ADHD, and so on. It also includes, it includes also, there's a chapter on what to do after you've kind of become HOD. The common like trajectory is to go into SLT, but not everybody wants to be SLT, and not everybody actually wants to become HOD. So we look at various other perspectives of teaching abroad, and therefore grappling with the IB curriculum, teaching, getting into like blogging and writing as a history educator. There's also a case study on leading ITT training as a history educator, and getting into lecturing for history educators as well, and leading history in an multi-academy trust, because now with the growth of multi-academy trust, there's needs for like national history leads or national maths leads and so on. So I really like that sort of case study, as well as how to teach politics and diversify the curriculum. So I tried to address essentially gaps within the traditional discourse, so that it's a book for everyone at any stage, at any time. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Brilliant, Emily. Thank you so much. And was your partner writer from the UAE? Were they back in the UK? How did you manage that?
So actually, Bloomsbury, they they actually got in touch with me. I didn't get in touch with them, and I had to, strangely enough, even though they got in touch with me, I had to write a proposal. Maybe that's the way. This is my first kind of solo kind of venture, so I had to do a proposal anyway, and I don't know if it's common in all publishers, but then they kind of test that proposal with practicing teachers. So actually she was a reviewer of the proposal, and then got in touch with her. And she
Fantastic. A reviewer who became a contributor. I love it, Emily.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to swing from history to English, and we've got the dynamic duo, Kerry and Zara here, who are joining us from the Leeds area. Kerry, are you in your car? I think you might be in your car, love. You just finished work.
I've had an interview and I'm on my way home.
Oh, bless you. Are you in a lay-by joining us? I appreciate the effort you're making, love. Sarah's at home, loving life with the lights on and the heating on, but it's great to see you all. Over to you two to tell us about the book that you co-wrote.
Yeah, so I'm not in Leeds anymore. I'm actually in Wilmslow, and Kerry and I think that's the nature of that's the nature of our collaboration, isn't it, Kerry? That even though we've been together, we've collaborated from afar. So I'm Zara. I'm one of the authors of Bloomsbury's Teacher Guide for Anita and me. And as we wrote this book, because as English teachers, we recognize that importance of diversifying the curriculum, of the importance of having voices, perspectives that go beyond the victim narratives, the kind of perspectives that empower our young people, but at the same time, they broaden their understanding of human experience. You know, it's that central idea of the text being the window and a mirror. But what the reality was that while the texts exist, we found that the resources do not. So that was partly the reason we said yes when this opportunity was offered to us. And we said yes to Anita and me, because what we found was it's a text that interweaves identities and histories quite well. It's rich in its exploration of difference, of being an outsider, of being an individual, but then also talks about the dangers of ostracism. And I sort of loved how Stuart put it. He did a foreword for us, and he says that these conversations will always be relevant in a world where we immediately feel threatened by something that we do not or choose not to understand. So yeah, when Bloomsbury offered it to us, I think it was a no-brainer. We had to say yes.
Zara, stop saying they offered it to us. They offered it to you.
So, Kerry, she's being modest here. I was really fortunate. Like Emily, I was involved with the Bloomsbury's Succeeding as a Teacher Guide. So I was involved, one of the co-authors of Succeeding as an English Teacher. And again, it's always one person who opens the door and gives an opportunity to another person. So it was Abigail Mann, who was another author, and she opened that door for me. And there I was being a co-author to this book. So Bloomsbury got in touch after we'd finished that project to say that, you know, we want to start a series of teacher guides. And this is the first book on the list. So what do you think? And honestly, I could not think of another person but my friend and colleague Kerry there. We adopted that mantra of women ed, being 10% braver. And it was actually over a staff barbecue, wasn't it, Kerry? We were sitting there and we're like, yeah, we'll do it. We'll sign on the dotted line.
And I think it taught us a lot about, sorry, this word's really overused, but resilience, professional resilience, but also personal resilience, and what can be achieved alongside your day job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I sort of what you were saying there, Emily. Writing is not an easy process with the day jobs and then with the things that life throws your way. So as I do with all my babies, I always enlist the help of mom and dad, which is what I did. So mom and dad moved in for a bit, and I locked myself in a room, and I was fed pakoras at sort of regular intervals, and I think that's why we're here. But I think some of the feedback that's our absolute favorite. We were really lucky to have Stuart Pryke do the foreword for us. And that was quite nice because as an English teacher, he sort of recognized the things from an English perspective, how we have big questions and themes and scaffolds. And we had to be really careful in how we handled the challenging and tricky vocabulary because there are lots of triggering topics in this text. So we had a handle with care section before every chapter because we wanted teachers to feel, first of all, forewarned and then forearmed in order to sort of approach those conversations in their lessons. Do you want to add something to that, Kerry?
Yeah, I think that's something we actually adopted from our own practice when we used to work together. And it's something that we know our own colleagues were concerned about. So it's a part of the book that we were able to sort of transfer from our own practice and find a structure that had worked in real life and transfer it across. And we're quite fortunate that that structure now has been taken on, and Bloomsbury are using it for the series.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you both. Shall I jump in there then and swing it
Go
over
on.
to our final author, and I'll come back for Q&A. So we're going from Kerry's car to Kwame's very interesting backdrop in Cambodia. He's just arrived in Cambodia to go and do some work. Where are you? Are you in some sort of wooden pod, or is it a bedroom? Where are you?
I'm actually in my hotel room in Cambodia, so it's, I think, a little bit past 2 o'clock in the morning. So,
Oh, well done. You win the gold star though. I thought Emily was doing well, Kwame. But thank you for fitting us into your international schedule. Over to you to tell us all about the book that you've recently brought to life.
yeah, Hannah, I'm excited to be here with you all. And the name of my book is Learning to Relearn, Supporting Identity in a Culturally Affirming Classroom. And before I start to share about this book, it's appropriate that I acknowledge that today is Independence Day for Ghana. So that's my ancestral home. So any Ghanaians in the house, happy Independence Day, 68 years young. And then also, as far as how this journey started for this book, it started when I was in Ethiopia. So I started my career as a middle years maths teacher, and then I moved abroad with my family when my wife started working with the U.S. Peace Corps. So that's I would say it's the U.S. equivalent of VSO, for those who are familiar with VSO. So it's the equivalent of that. So being abroad, you're coming across different cultures, people from different walks of life. And this is the first time in 13 years that I had the space and the freedom to reflect on my years as a classroom teacher, some of the mistakes I made with my students as far as how I was interacting with them. And I was really starting to explore more about identity. I started exploring more about the fact that I was a first generation Ghanaian American, the fact that I was coming across people from different cultures and different countries who held different privileges and different positionalities. And I had to recognize that I also came with those things as well, given the geographical context. So as far as how this journey started with Learning to Relearn, I actually was in the process of organizing a virtual conference for people at the height of COVID in 2021. And the goal was to have a multicultural setting, multiracial setting. I had 20 presenters. I was super excited about it. And I was promoting it on Instagram. And then one day when I was posting the flyer, I got a comment from an account called Indigenous Educators that posed a question. Hey, Kwame, do you have any Indigenous presenters presenting? And I was like, no, I don't, because I don't know any. So that's when this account said, hey, this is perpetuating the settler colonialism and the erasure that we experience as Indigenous communities. I would love to educate you more on this. So at this moment, she's calling me in. So she PMs me, we're having a conversation, and she's giving me all this education about settler colonialism, which I didn't really know about at the time. And for me, I was like, listen, because I harmed you publicly, I think it's only appropriate that you come on my podcast and we have a conversation about the harm that's been done. So I decided to remedy that by having a conversation, and it was great. And that's really when this idea of learning to relearn was born. This idea of having the critical humility to say, hey, I've harmed somebody subconsciously. Let me take the time to get to know who this individual is. Let me take the time to get to know the community that she is from. And that is when I just started to write this book. And from that point on, I started to interview people from different racial backgrounds, different linguistic backgrounds, different backgrounds of ability, and all other identity markers. And it just turned out to be this beautiful collage of counter stories from all these different people who come from these different communities. And what's so amazing about Learning to Relearn is that being a cis hetero Black male who's able-bodied and has these different privileges, I knew that the challenge would be writing a book about these different identities that I wasn't really a part of. And that was really my challenge all throughout, because you want to make sure you get the stories right and you're showing respect to the people who are sharing these stories. And when you're trying to do that with fidelity, you fall into this zone of perfectionism, which then stifles your writing process. And it took my editor to say, hey, Kwame, you're going to make mistakes no matter how much you try. Just put what's out there and just put the disclaimer saying, hey, this is my current knowledge of what I know, but my knowledge is still growing. And that's really the essence of this book. The whole idea is to build critical humility, to build capacity building, and to really get people into the spirit of identifying their biases and taking the time to get to know people, particularly from historically marginalized communities, because essentially it's students from those communities who are the ones who experience the most injustice. And we have to do a better job when it comes to, like Bennie says, diversifying our curriculum, when it comes to auditing some of our instructional practices and other aspects of the work that we do as educators. So this is a book that has had a lot of great reviews. I just learned that it was recognized as a finalist for one of these awards for reviews for 2 categories. So this is a book that's been doing really well, and I'm happy to share it with everybody here today.
Amazing. Thank you, Kwame. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for modelling that humility as well. And you kind of jumped into the question I wanted to go back to with Emily and to ask everyone that there are barriers to getting our thoughts onto paper and to getting our books out there and published and edited. So Emily, you talked about the fact that there were quite a few barriers. Do you want to just pick one of the barriers you faced and perhaps tell us how you worked around it to get to actually publication?
Yeah, I felt number one, I had so much in my mind and knew that I can't say I knew so much, but I just had, when you just have lots of information, you just want to get it on paper, then synthesizing that and then structuring that was a bit difficult. And Kwame hit on something, which is that kind of trying to be perfect, if that makes sense. So sometimes I've just got a really bad habit in terms of that, and second guessing myself. And if I'm being honest as well, that kind of imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm not really, good enough. So I actually did get back to the publishers and said, I don't want to do this. And then she was just really, really encouraging. And then I said, okay, I'll just do it again, get a co-author. So there was that kind of dealing with just imposter syndrome as well as just like, having so much in my mind.
Thank you, Emily.
And also,
Go on, finish off. Go on.
And it was during the time I was writing during a time where, if I'm being honest with you, I felt burnt out in my career. And that's when I made the decision to come to Dubai. And I had other issues, like finding out that my dad had cancer as well. So dealing with that personal aspect of life, and then writing the book, it was it's
a lot
challenging.
A lot. Thank you for sharing that, Emily. And I was going to swing to Bennie. Bennie's a prolific writer. We all know that Bennie birthed lots of books, but that doesn't mean it's any easier, Bennie, is it? When you get your books out there, what's some of the barriers that you've navigated and how have you got around them?
I think certainly when you're talking about DEI, as I am, you know that there are people out there who are going to object to some of the things that you say. And that hangs over you, I think, when you're writing. I was particularly concerned in this current political climate where I was talking about gender reassignment. in the curriculum, and how we navigate that space. And there's always a fear that you will have people hurling abuse at you, and so you try to anticipate all of those eventualities. So not only do you have your own process of writing the book, which for me can feel a little bit chaotic and a little bit onerous, but there's that fear that it won't be received well. And fortunately, it has been received well, and I haven't had any criticism yet, I imagine. But that's something that I think all writers face, and you have to be quite thick-skinned about it. But it doesn't go away. The fear doesn't go away.
Yeah, and there's always going to be keyboard warriors. I remember we talked about one of your reviews in your first book. Like, go and write your own book. Come on, people, get over yourselves. Zara and Kerry, how about you two? Did you have shared barriers and challenges, or different ones in your partnership? Who wants to go first?
Kerry, you go first.
I think we were really good at splitting things. I think once I come up with the original sort of like template and for how the chapters were going to run, we split it between us. But then you get guilt if the other person's doing more, and you feel like, oh gosh, I've got to play catch up, and I don't want to let the other person down. So it's quite an interesting dynamic when you're sharing the process, I found.
Yeah.
So a barrier for me was I really didn't want to let Zara down.
I think I really found that template helpful. So as someone who is EAL and bilingual and code switches regularly, it takes me much longer to put the thoughts in my head down onto paper. And I found that when that template was quite liberating, and it chunked the process. So there were times when I just couldn't fill in a box. I would just move on to a different section. But this working together, I think we worked really well, overcame that barrier where we would leave little feedback notes to each other. So we just kind of acknowledge something somebody had written and leave little notes on that manuscript for each other. And I think that was the kind of pick me up that got us through, and we finished it.
Love that, and cheerleading one another along the way. And Kwame, you referenced you're a math teacher, like you handle numbers rather than words. And I know you're a good talker, but how did you find the writing process, Kwame?
And I think I mentioned it before, but the biggest challenge was writing a book that involves so many different identity markers that you didn't really have a whole lot of knowledge about. So of course the challenge was with the editing process. So that meant many things. It meant doing more research. It meant rewriting chapters. It meant doing sensitivity reads, doing peer reviews, making sure that you had people from those different identities. So if there are people, if I'm talking about, cis heteronormativity, I need to tap on people from the LGBTQIA community to tell me about their experience with homophobia and transphobia, and other things as well. For example, like I had to draw into my community to help me with that. So I believe that was the biggest thing. But I think what came out of it was just the power of community and cross-racial solidarity. That's what really made this book so special.
Love that. Can I ask you all to pop your books up? Just do a flash of the books that you all have co-created. Massive thank you to, I love that. Pink jacket, pink book, Kerry. Very well color-coded here. Thank you all for getting these books out there. Also, massive thank you for the effort on this panel. Dubai, Cambodia, and a car in LA after an interview. I really appreciate you all making it here into the actual panel tonight as well. So go and get on with your evenings. Thank you very much. We'll be back in 60 seconds with our final panel of the evening. Speak to you all soon. Bye.